This computer. Okay, so we're continuing with our Bhagavad Gita study group for the Bhakti, the official ISKCON accredited Bhakti Shastri degree. And we're on chapter 2, verse 31 to 47 today. So text 31. Ye me matamidam nityam anutishtanti manava shraddhavanto nasuyanto muchante tepi karmabhi. Translation. One who executes his duties according to my injunctions and who follows this teaching. I'm sorry, wait, I'm in the wrong chapter. I was thinking, wait, that doesn't sound like the second chapter. Let me scroll. Let me share with you what I have in front of me here. I have as you know, I prefer the pre-Dravida Prabhu and Jayaditya Maharaj editions, the 1972 editions, the Gita 1972 edition. So that's what I use here. Here, I go back, sorry. 231. I apologize, I should have had this up. We went to this expo in near the LA airport yesterday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I can sort of identify with Nitai Prasad Prabhu's workload now. Okay, here we go. Svadharmam apicha vikshya navikam pitum arhasi dharmyadhi yudyat shreyonyat kshatriyasya navidyate. Considering your specific duty as a kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. Purport. Out of the 4 orders of social administration, the second order for the matter of good administration is called kshatriya. Kshat means hurt. One who gives protection from harm is called kshatriya or trayate, to give protection. The kshatriyas are trained for killing in the forest. A kshatriya would go into the forest and challenge a tiger face to face and fight with the tiger with his sword. When the tiger was killed, it would be offered the royal order of cremation. This system is being followed even up to the present day by the kshatriya kings of Jaipur state. The kshatriyas are especially trained for challenging and killing because religious violence is sometimes a necessary factor. Therefore, kshatriyas are never meant for accepting directly the order of sannyas or renunciation. Nonviolence in politics may be a diplomacy, but it is never a factor or a principle. In the religious law books, it is stated, there's a long verse here, in the battlefield, a king or kshatriya, while fighting another envious king of him, is eligible for achieving heavenly planets after death, as the Brahmanas also attained the heavenly planets by sacrificing animals in the sacrificial fire. Therefore, killing on the battle on the religious principle and the killing of animals in the sacrificial fire are not at all considered to be acts of violence, because everyone is benefited by the religious principles involved. The animal sacrifice gets a human life immediately without undergoing the gradual evolutionary process from one form to another. And the kshatriyas killed in the battlefield also attain the heavenly planets, as do the brahmanas who attain them by offering sacrifice. It's just a small note on Varnashram. It's interesting how Prabhupada is even referring to the Jaipur kshatriyas of today. But what is today? We're in Kali Yuga, right? The reason I mention this is because if you remember, there's this important verse from the Bhagavatam in the first canto, Prayen alpaya sabya kalav asmin yuge janaha. Can anyone finish that one? No? Manda sumanda matayo. Let me share it with you here. It's from 1:110. In 1:110, as you see, it's stated, Prayen alpayu shaha sabya kalavasmin yuge janaha manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya hiupadritaha. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. So the question can be raised like, well, how do you reconciliate, and also there's this famous statement, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. Have you heard that one? Kalo Shudra Sambhava. That in Kali Yuga, everyone is born a Shudra. So on the one side, you have these strong verses from the Bhagavatam and other, Shastra that says, look, in Kali Yuga, we're all Shudras. We're all like, bastards in the sense of, like bastard dogs, like mixed, where there's no like pure race. But at the same time, you see, you see still some remnants, for example, of, the Kshatriya community in Jaipur, these gotras or these castes, right? And also when Krishna talks in the Gita about acting according to one's nature, chaturvarnyam maya shrishta guna karma vibhagasha, he's acknowledging for always, not just for every age except Kali Yuga. He's acknowledging for every age that there's basically 4 varnas in human society, and everyone is influenced by the 3 modes of nature to act, more in one particular tendency than another, right? So therefore, even today, you'll have some people who are more Vaishya oriented, some who are more Shudra oriented, some who are more, Brahman oriented, etc. So it's kind of interesting. I don't think there's a clear cut like dichotomy. It's rather a sort of a mixture of these different verses and factors that give us sort of an informed, I think, reasonable opinion or view on this whole idea of varnashram or ashram in the age of Kali. So coming back to the verse, there are 2 swadharmas, specific duties. As long as one is not liberated, one has to perform the duties of that particular body in accordance with religious principles in order to achieve liberation. When one is liberated, one's swadharma, specific duty, becomes spiritual and is not in the material bodily concept of life. In the bodily concept of life, there are specific duties for the brahmanas and kshatriyas respectively, and such duties are unavoidable. Swadharma is ordained by the Lord, and this will be clarified in the 4th chapter. On the bodily plane, or the physical plane, Swadharma is called Varnashram Dharma, or man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Human civilization begins from the stage of Varnashram Dharma, or specific duties in terms of the specific modes of nature of the body obtained. Discharging one's specific duty in any field of action in accordance with Varnashram Dharma serves to elevate one to a higher status of life. Before we read on with the next reader, may I request that, because there's a lot of verses, we're doing like 20 today, can we read the verse and purports of the verses that the questions are related to? So like, for example, instead of reading 232 now, maybe in my list here I have Nitai Prasad Prabhu. Maybe Nitai Prasad Prabhu, you can read verse 234, right? And then after Blake Prabhu, you can read 238, and then we go to 240, 241, and then read 243, 44, 45, 46, 44, 47. In that way, that will probably take maybe an hour, and then we can go back and so let's just be safe. Let's cover our bases, because I'm afraid that if we do our reading now, like a verse by verse, we're not going to reach to 247, and there's some pretty important. That's a pretty important verse. So Nitai Prasad Prabhu, please lead us in reading 234. 234 now.
Okay. So text 34. People will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. Purport. Both as friend and philosopher to Arjuna, Lord Krishna now gives his final judgment regarding Arjuna's refusal to fight. The Lord says, Arjuna, if you leave the battlefield before the battle even begins, people will call you a coward. And if you think that people may call you bad names, but that you will save your life by fleeing the battlefield, then my advice is that you do better to die in the battle. For a respectable man like you, ill fame is worse than death. So you should not flee for fear of your life. Better to die in the battle. That will save you from the ill fame of misusing my friendship and from losing your prestige in society. So the final judgment of the Lord was for Arjuna to die in the battle and not draw.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to 238. Blake, Prabhu, are you up to it?
Yeah.
Actually,
238.
sorry. Well, let me if you don't mind, read just the verses up to 38. So like 35, 36, 37, and 38, and then just read the purport to 38. Let's do that. So in this way we can still knock out all the verses, but we'll focus on the purports to the question verses.
The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you a coward. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up and fight with determination. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing, you shall never incur sin. Purport. Lord Krishna now directly says that Arjuna should fight for the sake of fighting because he desires the battle. There is no consideration of happiness or distress, profit or gain, victory or defeat in the activities of Krishna consciousness. That everything should be performed for the sake of Krishna is transcendental consciousness. So there is no reaction to material activities. He who acts for his own sense gratification, either in goodness or passion, is subject to the reaction of good or bad. But he who has completely surrendered himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness is no longer obliged to anyone, nor is he a debtor to anyone, as he is in the ordinary course of activities. It is said, anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor, nor is he obliged to anyone, not the demigods, nor the sages, nor the people in general, nor kinsmen, nor humanity, nor forefathers. That is the indirect hint given by Krishna to Arjuna in this verse, and the matter will be more clearly explained in the following verses.
And there's two little things I want to mention. One is the fully surrendered devotee from a sort of ashram perspective, like for example, taking sannyas, right? And the other consideration of being a fully surrendered devotee and therefore not having any debts to pay towards the forefathers or any worship of other gods and goddesses to perform. And that's really sort of prevalent in India, in the Hindu countries where, the worship of different devatas is performed. It's less relevant for perhaps those of us who are, from Judeo-Christian European backgrounds, except maybe if you're really a huge fan of the pre-Christian Greek civilization, which had, worship to different gods and goddesses, right? So in the first context, like the thing that comes to mind is, for example, the devotee who, especially again in India, for example, who may be the youngest son or the oldest son, for example, and still he'll like join the ashram, and put on saffron and take sannyas, right? So one could say, well, wait a second, you have responsibilities, you have a duty to your old, to your parents, for example, and you have a duty to society, right? As a matter of fact, if you read in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's the story of Emperor Uttanapad, if I'm not mistaken. I forget the names, but he's torn because Narada Muni as well as Brahma, they're like giving him contradictory instructions. One is telling him, no, you have a duty to remain, to get married and to have children, and then to, rule the world and perform your duty, in the world and so on. And then Narada Muni is like, yeah, just forget family life, join the ashram, sort of, right? And that's why there's this famous verse, right? Tyaktva sadharmam. Let's go to this one. Tyaktva swa dharman. It's in Srimad Bhagavatam 157. Look at this one, guys. In 157, it's stated, Tyaktva sadharman charanam bhujam harer bhajana pakvo tatapatit tato yadi yatrakva fa badrama buddha mushakim kovartapto bhajatam sadharmataha. Right? So here's the translation. One who has forsaken his material occupation. So that's exactly what we're talking about, right? One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Of course, you can engage in the devotional service while being a grihasta, while having, occupations. And that's the whole thing about, chanting your rounds somehow or other during the 24 hours of your day, and somehow or other squeezing in some Bhakti Shastri homework, and somehow or other, attending at least a kirtan if possible or two during the week, and somehow or other, contributing some donations or giving some free books to people, etc., etc., etc. But here in this verse here, it's kind of like a sannyas verse. One who has forsaken his material occupation, right, to basically not just do bhakti, but do live as a sannyasi, doing only that's all you do all day is just hear and chant, may sometimes fall down while in a mature stage, yet there is no danger of his being successful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything. So this verse talks about how bhakti is so powerful, and even if you fall down, in your practice, you still are such a gainer, right? Whereas you can do all your material duties so well, but if you have no bhakti, what's the use? Like when I've been to India, I often met Brahmins, right? Brahmins, or Nepal, Brahmins who are not Vaishnavas and who are not even very religious, in whatever tradition they're from. And they basically follow the four regulative principles, and they're good fathers, they're good, workers or businessmen, and they're good children to their parents, and they're performing all their duties really well. But according to I think it's Narada Muni speaking here, if a non-devotee, right, although fully engaged in occupational duties, he does not gain anything, right? If you have no bhakti, you don't gain anything. And so back to this verse, Prabhupada quotes 11.541. Anyone who has completely, let me go back to that one. Anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor, nor is he obliged to anyone. So you want to join the Brahmacharya ashram, or you want to take sannyas in the Gaudiya Math or in ISKCON and stuff, but you have all your family members to take it. Technically speaking, no. You don't have to, because you're surrendering to Krishna. I mean, it's not something that we say publicly very much, because it also can be abused, but the principle is there. And for example, Prabhupada speaks in one of his lectures about Sridhar Swami, the commentator on the Bhagavatam. I've heard this lecture more than once. I think it's in 1977. And he mentions how Sridhar Swami was married. So here we're talking like commentator to the Bhagavatam, like an exalted soul, right? So Sridhar Swami was married, and Prabhupada says in his talk that Sridhar Swami was thinking, I want to maybe take sannyas. And somehow, as he was thinking that during those months or whatever, he got his wife pregnant. His wife became pregnant. And then he was, again, according to Prabhupada's own words, Sridhar Swami was thinking, oh, what do I do now, And then his wife gave birth, right? And then died during child labor. And then, so he was left with a child. Oh, and he was like, I mean, again, like this can be really, really used in the wrong way, like, for example, you don't have to show love to your children. You don't have to, perform your duty. And so, but Prabhupada, like, Prabhupada does mention that story, and you find, sort of justification in the verses that we're looking at right here, where he says that Prabhupada says that Sridhar Swami then was just wondering, okay, what do I do? What's next? And then he saw a little ant. No, he saw a baby lizard on the floor, this tiny little baby lizard. And then an ant somehow the baby lizard was on the ceiling. It fell to the floor, and it was just like on the floor. And then an ant walked right in front of the baby lizard, and the baby lizard, sucked the ant and ate it. And Prabhupada says that when Sridhar Swami saw that, he immediately went to the door and left, leaving his own baby there. Not to be imitated. But the point is, and Prabhupada gives the purport in that very same lecture. A few seconds later, he says, that he saw the sign that Krishna will maintain, Krishna will provide. And so he can, take sannyas for a higher purpose, namely, Krishna. Again, not to be imitated, but, the principle is there. On a theological level, like whether you want to believe in one God or many gods, like in South India, for example, even today in the efforts of ISKCON, I heard that, for example, when ISKCON was starting to spread in South India, where there's a very strong culture of demigod worship, as in North India as well, devotees were like preaching like really heavily, like, all you need is Krishna, take the demigods off your altar and stuff. And technically they were right. Isn't there a question that I asked you guys about the Shraddha Vishwas Kahe Sudrija Nishchoy? Yeah, you see in 241, there's that verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita 2262, where it says, right? Let's go to that right now, because we're in the same realm here. Look at this, guys. Look at this verse. Does someone want to read it? Because I'm doing all the talking. Lilar Sarkar, why don't you read the translation for us, because it's in Bengali.
শ্রদ্ধা শব্দে বিশ্বাস কহে সুদৃঢ় নিশ্চয়, কৃষ্ণে ভক্তি কইলে সর্বকর্ম কৃত হয়.
Thank you. So, right, Kaviraj Goswami defines this Shraddha. What is it? It's confident, firm faith that by rendering transcendental loving service to Krishna, one automatically performs all subsidiary activities. So that's what I'm talking about. These subsidiary activities can be either like, okay, my responsibility to, well, in an extreme case, to my son, or to my newborn child, or to my dying parents, but if you take sannyas for Krishna, technically, you're pouring water on the root of the tree, and therefore you don't have a responsibility. Sannyas, And then theologically speaking, the subsidiary activities is like, well, what about, what about my worship to Kali, or to well, in Bengal, Durga, right? Durga is like such a huge, like, oh my God, how can we live without worshiping Durga? Are you kidding? And then in Nepal also, Revati Kanta Prabhu will confirm. Like, there's I remember when I was in Kathmandu, I was blessed to give the Sunday feast lecture, and one devotee was asking, what about all the Shaivites and, the demigod worshippers? And I was like, well, we respect, but according to our Shastras, like, once you are a devotee of Krishna, you don't have to worship any other demigods. And Prabhupada, in his brilliant simplicity, gives this analogy of like, if you give money to the king, then you don't need to independently give money to the prime ministers, or, or to the debt, to the tax collector or whatever, because the tax collector, if he's not corrupt, will give the money to the king, right? So in a similar way, like, Krishna is the, original supreme personality of Godhead, and if we worship him, then, like Kaviraj Goswami says here, all subsidiary activities are automatically performed. But what we shouldn't do is like say, oh yeah, and that's what we've seen a lot in ISKCON, like devotees giving, artificially renouncing, their material duties and still continuing to perform sense gratification after that, getting remarried or having, more illicit sex or, or getting, what I mean? So, or yeah, especially in the case of the first scenario, regarding ashram and stuff. So, all right, well, let's go back to verse. Let's continue reading. Who wants to read next? Just the verses up to 40, and then 40 with the purport. Oh, you know what? Sorry. Let's do it slightly differently today, since we're kind of reading through. Let's follow the questions. Let's do it according to the questions that were asked. So remember, sorry for being a little bit spaced out here, but if you remember, I asked number 2 in the question number 2, how is 238 similar to 247? So Devakinandan Prabhu, if you're free, if you're available behind if we can go to 247, which we'll revisit before the class is over.
Love to see how my signal is here. Would you like me to read?
If you can, go, but 247, all the way to 247.
Starting from?
Just the verse 247.
Okay. Do you have it on the shared camera?
Oh, you don't have it? Okay, hold on. Here we go. 247 is here. Here you go. Oops, sorry. You got it? Devakinandan Prabhu? Seems like we can't hear him. Devakinandan Prabhu, are you with us? Or is your signal really bad, maybe? Okay, we'll pass. Atavi Krishna Prabhu, Basin says, can you read 247 and then perhaps read us your answer to your question as to how it's similar to 238? So read 247, please, and then read 238 again. And then if you don't mind, read us your answer from your question, from your answer.
Chandra Prabhu, I don't have it handy because it's on the email and I'm here on my phone, but I can read the verses. That's okay.
Sure, and I'll read your answer.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. It says 38, do not fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness and distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. And by so doing, you shall never incur sin. And then the 47 says, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty.
Can you read the first sentence again of 247?
Yes, you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action.
And then in 238, it says, do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. So you see how similar they are, right? And then you answered in very well, eloquently. What does Kaviraj Goswami say? Eloquence is truth spoken concisely. In both verses, you say, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that he should act for his sake and as a matter of duty without being affected by the dualities of the material world and giving up the results of activities. How does this verse apply, or how does this concept apply both materially and metaphysically? I think that's the question that I gave at the very end, in 247 at the last question. Well, let's go to that later then. We'll answer that question later. Well, no, let's answer it now. Revati Kantan Prabhu, if you're there with us, this is the question to number 7. How does how does a devotee of Krishna apply this verse, right? This notion of being detached from the result, both in his material life and in his spiritual life, or his actual service, like actual, devotional projects. Can you speak?
Hare Krishna, Dhanapana Prabhuji.
Sorry.
You're talking about like the both was a similar one, or the next question, like
Yeah, the one that you just that we just read, like how 247. The question I asked, the last question of the
they explain how 2.38 is similar to 2.47, right?
no, question number 7. How is a devotee of Krishna, or explain how a devotee of Krishna can or should apply this verse?
Oh, okay. Material. What I think is like number one is material life. For example, business, marriage, education projects, and
So
number two is
but before that, so what? So you start a business, but then you try your best, but you are not attached to whether you have great success or no success, right? For example.
right.
Or
Yeah,
you-
like if yeah, and then like if you have some like fruit coming through that, then you offer to the Krishna, like,
Right.
and like the second is preaching service endeavors, so we can like here share some spiritual wisdom with compassion and humility,
Yeah, and I really
serve
like.
essentially
Mm,
without expecting recognition or praise.
exactly, that's a nice one. Without expecting recognition or praise, like Bhaktisiddhanta used to say, like if no one comes to your sangha, preach to the four walls, right? Preach to the four, like whether I remember when I used to be a brahmachari and used to go distribute Prabhupada's books in the LA airport, used to really ram this concept so much every day before approaching people, precisely because most people, we're not doing what you want them to do. We're not giving the fruit that you would hope for, which is for them to say, oh, very nice, oh, and thank you for giving me this book. How much money can I give you? And never, like out of 100 people, 90 would not even stop. And out of 90 who would not even stop, maybe 8 would stop and then say, no, I'm not interested, goodbye. And maybe 2 would maybe take a book, right? So for those 98 people, this verse, like, hey, the fruit is not up to you, 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 was an important thing. Otherwise you go mad, right? So similarly, I don't know, if one of you one day will open a preaching center, or I don't know, like, you can be detached, you have to be detached, whether Krishna sends you many, like for example, we all are supposed to be gurus, either diksha or shiksha. So whether Krishna sends us a lot of shiksha, disciples, or diksha disciples, or not, or zero, hey, that's not up to us. We continue trying to give Krishna to others, to serve Lord Chaitanya in one way or other. And then whether, like Kanta Prabhu says here, whether we get recognition or praise, or whether we get, numbers of disciples, or, many books distributed, or many temples opened, that's up to Krishna, right? Just as it's up to Krishna ultimately whether we get admitted to Harvard University or get rejected from Harvard University, or, that our new restaurant, our Prasadam restaurant that we open in, I don't know, in downtown Madrid is successful, or whether it fails, right? So that's why it's such an important consideration, not just in our spiritual life, but also in our material life. Like we are really not fully in control of the result of our endeavors, right? Anything else you want to add? Any of you?
One more point. Remember that your service is an offering to Krishna, not a means for personal gain.
Yeah. Very important. Well, since you're at it, let's go to, can you read, Reverend Tikantam Prabhu, can you read verse 39, and then verse 40 with purport?
Thus far, I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain it in terms of walking without fruitive results, O son of Pritha. When you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. 2.40. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Activity in Krishna consciousness, or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectations of sense gratification, is the highest transcendental quality of work. Even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. Any work begun on the material plane has to be completed, otherwise the whole attempt becomes a failure. But any work begun in Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not a loss even if his work in Krishna consciousness is incomplete. 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent result, so that the next beginning is from the point of 2%.
So,
Whereas in yeah.
well,
Yes, Prabhu.
question to any of you, like, what does Prabhupada mean here? What is actually meant? What does Krishna talk about? Like, 2%, and then so it's about reincarnation, right? That you start your spiritual life. Can someone expand on that? 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results, so that the next beginning, what does Prabhupada mean by next beginning, is from the point of 2%. What does that mean? Anyone want to answer?
Yes, Prabhu, it means that it adds up. It means that it's all a plus, it all adds up. So there's never loss there. Whatever you do in Krishna consciousness bears permanent result. It has an eternal benefit, and there is no diminution. So as much as we can achieve in this lifetime, that accumulates. As much as we can achieve in this lifetime, that remains like a permanent, and as much as we can become Krishna conscious in this lifetime, from that point we will continue in our next lifetime.
Far out, huh? Yeah, perfect. And what is the second part of this question? When Krishna speaks of the most dangerous type of fear, right? What is this most dangerous type of fear? Anyone want to answer what they wrote? Rihak Sarkar, you haven't said anything yet, maybe today.
I think the most dangerous type of fear is, I think, if I'm born into a animal life in next life, that's the most dangerous fear, I think so.
Yeah, that's the standard answer we get, right? From the acharyas, from my understanding. The most dangerous type of fear is taking birth in an animal form. But why? Why one could ask, okay, what's the big deal? So why is it? Anyone want to venture? Why is it such a dangerous fear to have to take birth in the animal kingdom?
Prabhu, yes, actually, just to add up to what you're questioning, there are even some songs by the acharyas. I don't know who, maybe Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he says, I don't mind taking birth as an animal or in any species of life as long as I can remain your eternal servant. So that your question is very relevant, because why would it be? And also because we've seen instances of animals who have performed some sort of devotional service. So why would it be so detrimental?
Well, these are exceptional cases, we have to say, right? The dog in the house of a Vaishnava is rare, and especially the dog or any animal that's able to remember his past life, like the deer, of Bharat Maharaj, who becomes a deer and remembers his past life while being in a deer body. Those are exceptional cases. Can you expand on 99% of the other cases? What's the characteristics of 99% or 99.999% of life in animals, in an animal body?
Yeah, it's just full of ignorance. It's impossible to perform any spiritual life. basically.
Yeah, that's it, right? It's generally like super hard to connect with Krishna. And therefore the fear of the devotee is, perhaps we could say, not so much, oh my God, I don't want to be in a four-legged body, because like Atavi Krishna Prabhu aptly said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I don't care if if I am in a dog body, no problem. Just please let me be, in the house of your devotee, so I could get some prasadam and hear the holy name, implying that I'll be conscious. I'll have the same consciousness I have now, but I'll just be in a dog body, right? So we could claim that what the root fear is not so much the form that you get, but the limited consciousness that accompanies those forms, and therefore the inability to connect with one's beloved, Krishna, with one's beloved, God. That's what is the greatest fear of the devotee. Is forgetfulness of Krishna. And forgetfulness of Krishna seems to be sort of the standard, except for a few rare exceptions, in any form below human life, the human form. And therefore Prabhupada stressed so much, right? I mean, the whole Bhagavad, is it the Bhagavatam or it's the Vedanta Sutra, right? Who says, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, right? Now that you have a human body, now is the time for self-realization, because you've waited millions of lifetimes in darkness and tamaguna. Now you have a human body. Focus on that as your most important thing, right? Okay, moving on. Let's go to 241. I guess everyone's let me read then. 241. Or Devakinandan Prabhu, you haven't read. Oh yeah, you did. No, you didn't. Last time your volume was messed up. Are you in a better place now? Oh, you're driving, right? Huh? Okay, we can't hear you, but hopefully you can hear us. So I'll read 241. So 241 goes as follows, and then we'll take a little break. 241. Vyavasyatmika buddhir ekeha kuru nandana. Ahushaka hyanantascha buddhayo vevasayinam. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus. It's funny, I mean, just as a tiny parenthesis, those of you who listen to like 1990s rock and roll music, see how conditioned there's this rock and roll band called Guns N' Roses. Blake for sure knows the Guns N' Roses. Nitai Prasad. So remember that song, Oh Sweet Child of Mine? Oh Sweet Child of Mine. So in a way, that's how Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. Oh beloved child of the Kurus. Oh beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. Purport. A strong faith in Krishna consciousness that one should be elevated to the highest perfection of life is called Vyavasayatmika intelligence. The Chaitanya Charitamrita states, and here we go with this Shraddha Vishvaskahe Sudrina Nishchoy verse, right? Faith means unflinching trust. And this is how Prabhupada translates it right here in this verse. Like we saw an hour ago, right? The actual verse, Lihak read it to us in beautiful Bengali. But here Prabhupada is paraphrasing it with his own sauce. And he's saying faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. Isn't that wonderful? Unflinching trust in something sublime. When one is engaged in the duties of Krishna consciousness, he need not act in relationship to the material world with obligations to family, traditions, humanity, or nationality. Again, the extreme example of Sridhar Swami, right? Fruitive activities are the engagement of one's reactions from past or good bad deeds. When one is awake in Krishna consciousness, he need no longer endeavor for good results in his activities. Again, like, I mean, to give an example, you guys know I'm kind of close to Hriday Maharaj. She's one of my favorite spiritual leaders. And I remember at least once I remember him saying, we do our best. And then it's like, the result's not up to us. I just work here. Like the employee who goes and mops the floor of some hedge fund building in on Wall Street, whether the hedge fund or the company makes tons of money, or whether they go broke. For the sweeper, it doesn't matter, because he just works here. That's all I do. I just work here, and I get my my $18 an hour, and that's all I really need to know, because I just work here. So in a similar way, we just work in Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan movement. We just work here, and we do our best, and sometimes it's harder than others. Like if you were, in ISKCON in 1970s, it probably was a little bit more enthusing, at least in the Western world, to serve the mission, because Krishna was sending a lot more people, interested souls that was like growing like anything, right? And and trying to spread Krishna consciousness today is also exciting, but you got to perhaps be even more detached from the result, because the result is difficult to see. Like there's not many inroads being made among the among locals in the West. Let's be honest. So but hey, we just work here. We're just workers here. We're just sweepers in Lord Chaitanya's movement, and we just continue preaching to the four walls if necessary, but we continue anyway with our sadhana, and with according to our own ability, trying to share Krishna with others. Let me continue reading Prabhupada here. Fruitive activities are the engagements of one's reactions from past or good bad deeds. We read that already. When one is awake in Krishna consciousness, he need no longer endeavor for good results in his activities. When one is situated in Krishna consciousness, all activities are on the absolute plane, for they are no longer subject to dualities like good or bad. The highest perfection of Krishna consciousness is the renunciation of the material conception of life. What does that mean to you guys? Nitai Prasad Prabhu, what do you reckon Prabhupada means by this? The highest perfection of Krishna consciousness is renunciation of the material conception of life.
So material conception of life would be that you work day and night, like a dog, and try to enjoy your senses with the fruits you are getting from your business, for example. You're working for your senses rather than satisfying the senses of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Nice.
You become servant to your senses.
If I may add, identifying as your body, isn't it? We could also say that. You're identifying as your physical body. That's the material conception of life, right? Continuing, this state is automatically achieved by progressive Krishna consciousness. The resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on knowledge, by which one comes to know perfectly that Vasudeva, or Krishna, is the root of all manifested causes. So that's why this Bhakti Shastri is important, Prabhus, for the teachers as much as for the students, because we're forcing ourselves to absorb our minds and intelligence in knowledge, in transcendental knowledge, in Shastric knowledge. That's why it's called Shastra. What does Shastra mean, Blake? Do you know by any chance?
Holy books.
Yeah, and there's another definition to that same word.
Ooh, I don't know.
Devakinandan Prabhu? What's the second definition, or maybe there's even more, but what's another definition of the word Shastra, aside from scripture or holy books?
I do not know.
Okay. Well, then I'm sure now Lihak or Ravatikanta, or because they know Hindi and stuff. So Ravatikanta Prabhu, what does Shastra mean aside from scripture? Ravatikanta?
Are we allowed to use internet resources right now?
No, it's too late. Listen, let Ravatikanta Prabhu enlighten us. What does Shastra mean aside from scripture?
Exactly the definition, like probably like even I don't know the exact definition. Like
Okay, I'm surprised. Okay, Lihak, what is Tavi Krishna Prabhu, you know, but Lihak, what does Shastra mean aside from
Sorry,
scripture? Huh?
sorry.
What is it?
any
I
instruction,
also
any instruction.
I can't. Wait. Let Lihak, you speak.
I say that sorry. I also don't know the correct
Okay.
answer.
Yeah, even the Hindi and Bengali guys don't know. Dude, this is Kali Yuga, bro. I'm kidding. Okay, Atavi Krishna Prabhu from good old Mexico. What does Shastra mean?
Shastra means weapon.
Weapon.
Oh,
You know, that's why we hear the what is it? What is that atomic weapon? The weapon that, you know, that Parikshit Maharaj is about to get hit by the Brahmastra, right? But okay, that's another word, sorry. Anyway, Shastra means weapons. So why? Because with weapons you cut down your enemy or you cut down ignorance. So scripture is like a weapon with which, you know, we're able to cut down ignorance and stay Krishna conscious. And I mentioned that because right here, Prabhupada mentions, right, that the resolute purpose of a person in Krishna consciousness is based on knowledge or scripture, right? So by reading scripture, by reading Prabhupada's books on a regular basis, we keep our you know, the edge of our sword, so to speak, sharp, so that we can cut through ignorance and be enthusiastic to, you know, pick up our bead bag and chant Hare Krishna. Therefore, it's so important that you guys, you know, not just once a week on Bhakti Shastri, but I hope on a regular basis you're listening to lectures of whoever's inspiring you, you know, Prabhupada or whatever senior devotee you like, and you're reading Prabhupada's books on a regular basis. You have to do that, Prabhus. You have to do that. Otherwise, you know, your rounds become slack, or you don't chant 16 rounds, right? As water on the root of a tree is automatically distributed to the leaves and branches, in Krishna consciousness, one can render the highest service to everyone, namely self, family, society, country, humanity. Right? Oh, you can render the highest service to everybody by being Krishna conscious. Does anyone know the verse that Prabhupada is referring to here from the Bhagavatam about watering the root of a tree? Sorry for the background noise. Watering the root of a tree.
Yes, Prabhu, it's somewhere in Canto 4.
Yeah.
Achuteja. That's the last word of the whole verse, right? Achuteja.
Yeah, you're right. Here, let me share it with you, Prabhus. It's from 4:31:14. Right? Yata taror mula niche chanena tripyanti yatskanda bujopashakaha prano paharach chayatendriyanam tateva sarvahanam achuteja. You want to read it, Tatavi Krishna Prabhu?
As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, simply worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality.
Yeah. So you see, Prabhupada is kind of paraphrasing that verse when he's here. Let me share it with you here. When he's saying as water on the root of a tree, right, is automatically distributed to the leaves and branches. So here he's paraphrasing directly the first part of that verse, which is not the feeding of the stomach, but the pouring water on the tree. So last two paragraphs, and then we'll take a break. Service in Krishna consciousness is, however, best practice. So here Prabhupada's starting to emphasize the importance of a guru. Prabhupada used to do that a lot. Like he really stressed, guru is so important, guidance from someone who knows Krishna. Service in Krishna consciousness is, however, best practice under the able guidance of a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Krishna, who knows the nature of the student and who can guide him to act in Krishna consciousness. As such, to be well versed in Krishna consciousness, one has to act firmly and obey the representative of Krishna, and one should accept the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master as one's mission in life, right? So here Prabhupada is revealing his heart to us, because in other places he mentions, right, that when this verse was really important for him, especially the comment by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, right? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur instructs us in his famous prayers. Yes, so in other words, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary to this verse, right? Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana, right? That you are resolute in purpose and the aim is one. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that this practically means, at ground level, what does it mean? It means that you take the instructions of your guru very seriously. And so for him, when Prabhupada read this comment by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that reading of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse and connecting it to following the instruction of one's guru solidified Prabhupada's dedication to the instruction that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had given him in 1922, spread Krishna consciousness in the English-speaking world. And it's on the strength of this verse, and specifically the comment of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on this verse, that Prabhupada set out to America, to establish Krishna consciousness in the world. So so historically speaking, in terms of the spreading of Krishna consciousness all over the world, especially, with Prabhupada coming to the West, this verse is super significant. Historically speaking, it's super significant because it's this verse that, as I said, that sparked or re-solidified, or, not to say that it was not solidified and, Prabhupada was a pure devotee, but in terms of a Leela sense, this verse gave Prabhupada all the more, spiritual enthusiasm to go, on the Jaladuta, to step on the Jaladuta. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur instructs us in his famous prayers to the spiritual master, Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado, Yasya prasada nagati kutopi, Dhyayam stuvam stasya shastri sandhyam vande guru shri charanarvindam. By satisfaction of the spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes satisfied. And by not satisfying the spiritual master, there is no chance of being promoted to the plane of Krishna consciousness. I should therefore meditate and pray for his mercy 3 times a day and offer my respectful obeisances unto him, my spiritual master. The whole process, however, depends on perfect knowledge of the soul beyond the conception of the body, not theoretically but practically, when there is no longer chance for sense gratification manifested in fruitive activities. One who is not firmly fixed in mind is diverted by various types of fruitive acts. Oh, can you guys hear me? Still? Okay, I think the camera finished though. I don't have a... Can you see me now, Prabhus?
Yes, we can.
It's probably not as good quality, right? But who cares? How come I'm not? Oh, because I gotta view.
And now I have you. Now we have you big screen pinned.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So sorry about that. My battery died on the other camera. So yeah, Prabhupada says The one who is not firmly fixed in mind is diverted by various types of furtive acts. And therefore, devotees should, we're men, so, and we're, attracted to well, like everybody, we're attracted to sex life. So, for example, pornography should avoid pornography, or should avoid as much sense gratification, avoid all sense gratification, really, because it's poison for us, and yes, the Bhagavatam itself talks about, the reins of the horse, and if you bring in the reins too tight, the horse may, but I don't think that's a justification for actually sinning. I mean, sinful life is never justified in any way, ever. Whether we're super attached or not attached, the act of sinning, of breaking dharma, is never justified, right? And not just that, but on an experiential level, we all know, like the band Shelter sang, what is it? The famous band Raghunath Prabhu, who was in the 1990s punk rock Krishna hardcore band. And once again, we get attached. We think we got the answer. I've ran into many walls. Still, I think I'll get the answer. Here we go again. Here we go again. Here we go again. The Bhagavatam talks about chewing the chewed. You pick up some gum, you eat some gum, you squeeze out all the juice out of it, you throw it away, and then you're like, oh no, well, let me pick it up again, and you put the gum in your mouth, and oh no, oh yeah, well no, there is no taste, and or beating a empty husk of rice. I mean, the Bhagavatam is full of these examples, and we know from personal experience, it looks great, but we fall for it, and then surprise, right? So that's the point here. Krishna is telling us, right, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. So, we have to remain resolute, and the way we remain resolute, Prabhus, is pretty simple. We have to, stay close to this hearing and chanting process, right? Okay, so let's take a break for 10 minutes, and then we'll finish for the last 40 minutes on the other questions. Okay? So I'll pause the recording, and we can come back within 5 or 10 minutes. How do we? Are we still recording here?
Still recording, Prabhu.
Okay, so I'll pause it. See you in 5. I'm recording, and I'll share where you are. Okay, go ahead.
Text 42-43, purport. People in general are not very intelligent, and due to their ignorance, they are most attached to the...
Sorry, the translations, of course, also.
Sure. Translation. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth, being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life. They say that there is nothing more than this. Purport. People in general are not very intelligent, and due to their ignorance, they are most attached to the fruitive activities recommended in the Karma Kand portion of the Vedas. They do not want anything more than sense gratification, sense gratificatory proposals for enjoying life in heaven, where wine and women are available and material opulence is very common. In the Vedas, many sacrifices are recommended for elevation to the heavenly planets, especially the Jyotish Toma sacrifices. In fact, it is stated that anyone desiring elevation to heavenly planets must perform these sacrifices, and men with poor fund of knowledge think that this is the whole purpose of Vedic wisdom. It is very difficult for such inexperienced persons to be situated in the determined action of Krishna consciousness. As fools are attached to the flowers of poisonous trees without knowing the results of such attractions, unenlightened men are similarly attracted by such heavenly opulence and the sense enjoyment thereof. In the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, it is said, Apma so mam amarta abu ma, and akshayam ha vai chaturmasya yagyana shuktam bhavati. In other words, those who perform the 4-month penances become eligible to drink the Soma Ras beverages to become immortal and happy forever. Even on this earth, some are very eager to have soma ras, to become strong and fit to enjoy sense gratifications. Such persons have no faith in liberation from material bondage, and they are very much attached to the pompous ceremonies of Vedic sacrifices. They are generally sensual, and they do not want anything other than the heavenly pleasures of life. It is understood that there are gardens called Nandana Kanan, in which there is good opportunity for association with angelic, beautiful women and having a profuse supply of Soma Ras wine. Such bodily happiness is certainly sensual. Therefore, there are those who are purely attached to such material temporary happiness as lords of the material world.
Let me say one thing before you continue, Prabhu. There's one thing that, I mean, I would recommend you guys know this reference because it's such an amazing statement by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, and remember, this is in the context of Hindu India, where, you know, everybody basically knows about the Veda, the Mahabharata, the Upanishad, you know, and the Vedas in general, right, are very, very much respected and important and veneered. It's not like, you know, in today's society, especially in the West, where what? You know, like people don't have, many people have no idea even of the Vedas, right? What to speak of their importance and you know, epistemological authority. So in that context of, you know, early 20th century, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that you could take all the Vedic literatures and burn them. If all the Vedic literatures were taken together and were burned to a crisp, and if just the Srimad Bhagavatam survived, he said nothing would be lost. You heard that one, Atavi Krishna Prabhu? Can you imagine? Like, nothing would be lost. So sorry to interrupt, but just it's a nice, you know, analogy or anecdote for you guys to know just how important the Bhagavatam is and how important Krishna consciousness in terms of it's just the essence, the distilled essence of the essence of the essence. You know, reading the Bhagavatam, reading the Gita, and chanting Hare Krishna, ultimately, that is the distilled essence of the essence of the essence of the essence of all the Vedic things, right? So we're, by Prabhupada's mercy, we're situated right at that, you know, it couldn't be more condensed and essential than what he gave us. Please read on, Nitai Prasad Prabhu.
Text 44. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. Purport. Samadhi means fixed mind. The Vedic dictionary, the Nirukti, says Samyag Adhiyate Samin Atma Tattva Yathat Mayam. When the mind is fixed for understanding the self, it is said to be in Samadhi. Samadhi is never possible for persons interested in material sense enjoyments and bewildered by such temporary things. They are more or less condemned by the process of material energy.
So again, the theme of, you know, being distracted by sense gratification. Please read on.
Text 45. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities, from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Purport. All material activities involve actions and reactions in the three modes of material nature. They are meant for fruitive results, which cause bondage in the material world. The Vedas deal mostly with fruitive activities to gradually elevate the general public from the field of sense gratification to a position on the transcendental plane. Arjuna, as a student and a friend of Lord Krishna, is advised to raise himself to the transcendental position of Vedanta philosophy, where in the beginning there is Brahma Jigyasa, or questions on the supreme transcendence. All the living entities who are in the material world are struggling very hard for existence. For them, the Lord, after creation of the material world, gave the Vedic wisdom advising how to live and get rid of the material entanglement. When the activities for sense gratification, namely the Karmakanda chapter, are finished, then the chance for spiritual realization is offered in the form of the Upanishads, which are part of the Vedas, as the Bhagavad Gita is a part of the fifth Veda, namely the Mahabharata. The Upanishads mark the beginning of transcendental life. As long as the material body exists, there are actions and reactions in the material modes. One has to learn tolerance in the face of dualities such as happiness and distress, or cold and warmth, and by tolerating such dualities become free from anxieties regarding gain and loss. This transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. Text 46, Prabhu.
Yeah, please.
All purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. Purport. The rituals and sacrifices mentioned in the Karma Kanda division of the Vedic literature are meant to encourage gradual development of self-realization. And the purpose of self-realization is clearly stated in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 15.15. The purpose of studying the Vedas is to know Lord Krishna, the primeval cause of everything. So self-realization means understanding Krishna and one's eternal relationship with him. The relationship of the living entities with Krishna is also mentioned in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 15.7. The living entities are parts and parcels of Krishna. Therefore, revival of Krishna consciousness by the individual living entity is the highest perfectional stage of Vedic knowledge. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam 3.33.7 as follows. Aho bata swa pakoto gariyan yaj jivyagre vartate nama tu bhayam te pus tapaste juhuvahu sasnur araya brahmanuchur nama grananti yate. O my Lord, a person who is chanting your holy name, although born of a low family like that of the Chandala, dog eater, is situated on the highest platform of self-realization. Such a person must have performed all kinds of penances and sacrifices according to Vedic rituals and studied the Vedic literatures many, many times after taking his bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. Such a person is considered to be the best of the Aryan family. So one must be intelligent enough to understand the purpose of the Vedas without being attached to the rituals only. One must not desire to be elevated to the heavenly kingdoms for a better quality of sense gratification. It is not possible for the common man in this age to follow all the rules and regulations of the Vedic rituals. Nor is it possible to study all the Vedanta and Upanishads thoroughly. It requires much time, energy, knowledge, and resources to execute the purposes of the Vedas. This is hardly possible in this age. The best purpose of Vedic culture is served, however, by chanting the holy name of the Lord, as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, the deliverer of all fallen souls. When Lord Chaitanya was asked by a great Vedic scholar, Prakashananda Saraswati, why he, the Lord, was chanting the holy name of the Lord like a sentimentalist instead of studying Vedanta philosophy, the Lord replied that his spiritual master had found him to be a great fool and thus asked him to chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. He did so and became ecstatic like a madman. In this age of Kali, most of the population is foolish and not adequately educated to understand Vedanta philosophy. The best purpose of Vedanta philosophy is served by inoffensively chanting the holy name of the Lord. Vedanta is the last word in Vedic wisdom, and the author and knower of the Vedanta philosophy is Lord Krishna, and the highest Vedantist is the great soul who takes pleasure in chanting the holy name of the Lord. This is ultimate purpose of all Vedic mysticism. We can't hear you, Prabhu.
Sorry, I said, wow, what a wonderful last part of this purport, huh? So, like, well, yeah, like I said, like we're all what Prabhupada gave us is really perfect and essential. It's funny because you see in ISKCON sort of like two, in one way, you know, and fortunately the main current is like, yeah, let's just chant Hare Krishna in whatever context of this planet we are, with whatever culture surrounds us, try to spiritualize that culture around us by making, you know, engaging in Krishna service, you know, offer your pizza or your chow mein or your tacos, you know, to Krishna, you know, chant Hare Krishna, and you know, dress in the mode of goodness, whatever it is, and read the Bhagavatam, and that's it, and go back home back to Godhead, and help others go back home back to Godhead on the way. You don't need to read anything else, especially like subsidiary other parts of the Vedas. And then, but you sometimes a little bit, you also see this sort of like this endeavor to somehow, you know, be more Vedic than Prabhupada. You know, like there's a saying to be more Catholic than the Pope. Like you can't be more Catholic than the Pope, right? Well, I mean, now they are, because the Pope is, you know, is getting into hot waters because he's sort of blessing homosexual marriages and blessing them, not necessarily like a marriage, but homosexual unions. And the Catholics, according to them at least, you know, many of the senior members of the Catholic Church are up in arms about that. Anyway, there's this expression, you know, don't be more Catholic than the Pope. So in a similar way, like, don't be more Vedic than Prabhupada. You know, like, so for example, and if it was okay for Prabhupada to, you know, to I don't know, to eat some Western veggie burger. I don't know if devotees ever gave him a veggie burger, but you know what I mean? Like Prabhupada drank 7-Up that he probably offered to Krishna before he drank it. So if it's okay for Prabhupada to drink 7-Up, you know, why should we say, I'm not saying devotees say, you know, oh, it's bad to drink 7-Up, but there seems to be somewhat of an endeavor to, like, you know, bring in other references from other scriptures. Who knows if they're not corrupt? Who knows if they even come into the category of upasana kanda, of, like, you know, of actual transcendental knowledge about bhakti, pure bhakti to Vishnu, right? Because like Krishna himself says, you know, the Vedas mostly deal with the 3 modes of nature, right? So there's all sorts of stuff in the Vedic literatures which are not transcendental, which are not directly related to Krishna, to devotion, to selfless devotion to Radha Krishna, which is what we're about, and what we believe is the essence of all the Vedas, right? So, you know, whatever, devotees can do whatever they want, but at least we're getting word from Krishna himself, like from the Lord himself, and from Prabhupada, that hey, if we're just chanting Hare Krishna, I mean, those last words right here of Prabhupada are phenomenal, These last sentences that Nitai Prasad read, right? Most of the people, I mean, this is so powerful. It is not possible for the common man in this age to follow all the rules and regulations of the Vedic rituals and the injunctions of the Vedas and the Upanishads. Even there's a letter in 1977 where Prabhupada says, do not try to follow the Manu Samhita. If you try to follow the Manu Samhita, you will become degraded. Right there in 1977, a letter, you know, guys, some devotees, and you see, I mean, at least you saw before Bhakti Vidya, so, you know, that a guy in Mayapur who was ousted from Mayapur, but they were all about reading the Manu Samhita, Manu Sapin. Just see how Prabhupada's words became prophetic. They were all about trying to establish, you know, the Manu Samhita and live according to the Manu Samhita, you know, in 2022, you know, in New York City. Like, good luck, right? And you see it was a total failure. And then all they can do is basically just some sort of externals. Yeah, no stitched cloth. Look how Vedic I am. It's so shallow. And it's so impractical. Prabhupada himself says here, it's not possible for the common man in this age to follow all the rules and regulations of the Vedic rituals and the injunctions of the Vedas. It requires much time, energy, knowledge, and resources to execute the purpose of the Vedas. This is hardly possible in this age. The best purpose of the Vedic culture is served, however, by chanting. Oh, sorry, there's a washing machine. The best purpose of the Vedic literature, the Vedic culture, is served by chanting the holy name of the Lord, right? So you want to be Vedic, you want to follow Vedic culture, chant Hare Krishna. Chant Hare Krishna purely. That means, without sinning, by following the four regulative principles, basically. Follow the four regulative principles, chant Hare Krishna, and you're following the Vedic literatures, the Vedic culture in its most essential form, right? And then that last sentence of Prabhupada is wonderful, right? The best purpose of Vedanta philosophy is served by inoffensively chanting the holy name. And here, the highest Vedantist is who? He is the great soul who takes pleasure in chanting the holy name of the Lord. Okay, who's next? Or before we go to the last one and finish on 247, who would like to answer? Well, Devakinandan Prabhu, now you're in front of a nice speaker and stuff. Can you give us your answer, whether read it from your own answer or paraphrase it to to the question as to 244, which we skipped kind of. What are the negative effects of engaging in sense
Negative effects of engaging in sense gratification?
Yeah.
And the hint is the answer to this question is in the actual words of Krishna in this verse. So I wrote,
I knew you were
the primary negative effect of sense gratification is that of bewilderment. And secondary to this bewilderment is a blocking of any possibility to achieve samadhi, what to speak of any resolute determination for devotional service.
Yeah, beautifully said. Devakinandan Prabhu, would you like, since you're now with a good mic, would you like to read the last verse for today's reading, 247, and the purport as well?
So you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. So purport. There are three considerations here: prescribed duties, capricious work, and inaction. Prescribed duties refer to activities performed while one is in the modes of material nature. Capricious work means actions without the sanction of authority, and inaction means not performing one's prescribed duties. The Lord advised that Arjuna not be inactive, but that he perform his prescribed duty without being attached to the result. One who is attached to the result of his work is also the cause of the inaction. Thus, he is the enjoyer or sufferer of the result of such actions. As far as prescribed duties are concerned, they can be fitted into three subdivisions, namely routine work, emergency work, and desired activities. Routine work, in terms of the spiritual injunctions, is done without the desire for results. As one has to do it, obligatory work is the action in the mode of goodness. Work with results becomes the cause of bondage. Therefore, such work is not auspicious. Everyone has his proprietary right in regard to prescribed duties, but should act without attachment to the result. Such disinterested obligatory duties doubtlessly lead one to the path of liberation. Arjuna was therefore advised by the Lord to fight as a matter of duty, without attachment to the result. His non-participation in the battle is another side of attachment. Such attachment never leads one to the path of salvation. Any attachment, positive or negative, is cause for bondage. Inaction is sinful. Therefore, fighting as a matter of duty was the only auspicious path of salvation for Arjuna.
Thank you. What does Krishna mean here by never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities? Anyone would like to venture on answering this question? What does he mean by never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities?
Is it like how he says, I'm the ability in man? So he means that actually Krishna is giving you the skills which you're doing your activities with?
And as well as the results, perhaps, too, right?
Yeah.
Not a blade of grass moves without the Lord's sanction. So, yeah. Good point, Blake Prabhu. Atavi Krishna Prabhu, can you tell us a little bit about the 5 factors of action? Because I think it's related to this idea of never considering ourselves to be the cause of the results of our activities.
All right. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for pointing that out, because I was going to ask you as well, like this sentence could be misunderstood, right? That we're not guilty for whatever we do. So when one could misuse this sentence to just like justify whatever he does by not considering himself.
Oh,
right. So yeah,
I just raped this woman, but hey, I don't consider myself the cause. Oh God.
exactly. But yeah, you've raised a good point. That's on chapter 18, right? The 5 factors. I don't know if I find it like quickly, but yeah, I think it's the endeavor, the place of action, the different senses. I think ultimately the super soul is the last one to sanction whatever happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The Paramatma who sanctions. So there's the endeavor, but then there's the sanction. Like I tried to get married so many years, so much, I had whatever, a high standard or picky or whatever, but I tried so many years, to get married. And it never, I guess that sanction ultimately was never granted. Right? It just never happened. I mean, Krishna may, who knows? I go back to the spiritual world, Krishna, where you're like, what are you talking about? I gave the sanction all along. You're the one who said no so many times. Maybe, but I still like that example of like, you can try in many ways for a particular desired result, but, you're not completely in control. You're not completely in control. Confirmed by the washing machine. Anyone want to give another example in their own lives of like where Krishna really showed you very clearly that you're not the cause of the results of your activities, whether good or bad? Like, maybe you were very pleasantly, quote unquote, surprised by something, or, disappointed in another. Anyone want to share?
Yeah, I guess. Sorry, go ahead, Blake Prabhu.
Okay. I would just share one small thing that I heard Vaisheshika Prabhu say. And he said that he met a Christian priest in the airport, and then they were talking, and the priest told him, after doing this job for 20 years or more, I know only 2 things. 1, there is definitely a God, and 2 is not me.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know, for some reason that just came in my mind when
It's totally relevant.
Yeah.
Tavi Krishna, you were gonna tell something? You were gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Prabhu, like sometimes when we're out on book distribution, you've mentioned in other raid how difficult it is for someone to take a book. But if all of a sudden one person becomes a devotee from taking a book from you, then we could not claim that we have made him a devotee or anything. It's just that person had enough sukriti, or maybe he had practiced devotional service in a previous lifetime, and we were just an instrument to hand him the book, and he was already a devotee. It's not that by us he became a devotee. He had already his own path previously, and we were just an instrument to connect him. Right?
What's that? How does Krishna say that? Bhava Savya Sachin. There's that one famous one-liner in the Gita where Krishna says, right, I have already slain all these, you be but an instrument. Does anyone?
Exactly, yes, 11th chapter, right?
Yeah.
O Savyasachi, you can only be an instrument in the fight.
That's right. Here it is. Here's the actual Sanskrit. Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. This is, I don't know whose Bhagavad Gita. This is Swami Muktananda. You better not read the commentary, but here's the Sanskrit. Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. Be an instrument. Yeah. Anyone else want to say something? Prabhus? Lihak? You want to say something?
Prabhu.
Any personal anecdotes of how? So there was this Shruti. I don't know if you ever met. There was the temple president for the Bhaktivedanta Manor. He passed away 2-3 years ago. His name was Shruti Dharma Prabhu. He was a Indian body, born I think in one of those African countries like Kenya or and then I think he grew up in England and was very much loved by the whole Manor community, Shruti Dharma Prabhu. And I don't think he came up with this statement, which I'll share with you, but he often used to say, that in life you should, what is it? Hope for the best, expect the worst. So in the sense that, we do our best, we put in our best effort, our best intelligence, our best endeavor, our part of the deal, right? Whether it's in simply distributing a book to someone and hoping the person will take, or opening a temple, or, having disciples, or, marrying so-and-so, or opening such and such business, or, choosing to move to such and such a city, or getting this particular job, etc. We put in our best effort, and at the same time, we're detached from the result. So just to finish, how do we, okay, nice, but how do we actually practice that? How does a devotee fulfill Krishna's instruction to be detached from the result, from the fruit of his endeavor? How is that practically obtained or realized or achieved?
Well, I mean, it's hard, but it's a state of mind, as far as I've experienced. If you can look at things in a way, in that detached way, it releases a lot of load off of your shoulders. I mean, speaking for yourself, not speaking for those who may depend on you for certain things.
So you're saying it's like you just gotta get in that mode.
Well, I don't say it's that simple. There are proven techniques for helping one to get into that mode. The chanting of holy name, for example, for the prime example.
Yeah.
But then it's possible to stay in that mode, at least for a little while, by just logic.
Yeah.
Probably not forever.
And reminding ourselves too of the verse. Right? Like whether you're on book distribution, like, hey, I have a right to perform my duty, but I'm not entitled to fruits of action. I'm not entitled to fruits of action. Hello, I'm not entitled to fruits of action. Or like, sorry. Like, to share a personal analogy, like I'm with my business partner. We're going to this expo, the Conscious Life Expo, and near the LAX airport at the Hilton Hotel. And, it's kind of like book distribution, but we're selling, zeolite powder. So it's not nearly as transcendental, obviously, a whole different category. But the principle is the same. Like someone comes and like we try to, tell them how zeolite detoxifies the system, blah, blah, blah. And then whether they take or not, and so I reminded myself, like by reading those verses, like, hey, fight for the sake of fighting without considering gain or loss. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. In this way, like you say, Devaki Nandan Prabhu, where we have that healthy mindset. And what's the result? Just to finish, anyone want to say what is the result if by Krishna's mercy we're able to have that state of mind in our life?
Well,
Now go ahead, Blake Prabhu.
Yeah, go ahead, Blake Prabhu.
It takes pressure off of you to, like, if you have a lot of pressure to get a result, and then you don't have the pressure, you can kind of be yourself more, or you may do the job better if you don't have that pressure. Feel more relaxed.
Yeah, good point. Anyone else?
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say to have peace. It's just one word, peace.
If you can pull it off, is keeping up with your legitimate responsibilities and staying relaxed while doing so. You can be multiples more effective. If you can pull it off to stay like that's kind of a razor's edge, isn't it? Staying relaxed and getting your duties, attending to your duties properly. I'm not hearing anything.
Hey, we're just finishing here the last 2 minutes because the washing machine is making so much noise in the back. So yeah, I hear you. It's a good point. So peace and satisfaction and getting a lot of weight off our shoulders. Yeah. And Krishna consciousness, I guess, too. I mean, we're Krishna conscious in that state because we're able to think more of Krishna than on the result of our activity, right?
We only have control over our inputs anyway.
Right.
I mean, just as a matter of fact, you're not directly responsible for any results of anything, pretty much. Just certain puny inputs we may put into each situation that we find ourselves intersecting with.
It's humbling. Okay, Prabhus. We won't do a little kirtan because the washing machine is making so much noise, so we'll stop 5 minutes early. So my obeisances, and thank you. And next week, Atul Krishna Prabhu is gonna teach, and you'll get the questions, within a day or two, as usual.
Thank you very much,
everybody. My obeisances.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Dhanyavad Pradhan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Namo. Hare Bol.
Hare Bol, Hare Krishna.